Hello, everybody. It's Graham Coe. I'll lift this up a little bit so you can actually see my face. How about that? Welcome to my music. I haven't done one of these for over a week now, which is a bit of a miss for me, but it's been so busy. So apologies if you've missed me or you've missed hearing from musicians. But we're putting that right now. I'll be speaking to Katie about her life in music straight after this. Katie, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
That's all right. Where are you living? Where do you come from?
So I'm like on the outskirts of London, kind of like towards the east.
Right.
So yeah, it's quite nice because I kind of can go into London when I want to.
Go in.
I can leave as also when I want to. Yeah, which is nice.
Absolutely. I always feel a little bit like that about London.
Yeah. Where are you?
Well, I'm in the southwest, so actually I'm in Somerset. But I used to do a lot of work in London, even living here. So I used to commute, which is quite a long commute. And you end up finding all sorts of different ways of doing it to kind of keep it fresh. So sometimes I travel down the 303 and onto the M3. Other times I would like travel to Andover and then pick up the train at Andover and then go in from there, because that's about the last stop where you can then come back out late. Yeah.
So I'm on like the Elizabeth line here, so it's like all brand new and shiny, but it's like it's not a great. Also, it's kind of one of those ones where everybody's striking every other week or something, or something's happening. So it's like, you get to the weekend and you're like, oh, I'll go into London, then you can't because the trains aren't working. But other than that, it's okay.
And then you'd have to get on a bus back or something like that.
And buses, it would just take forever. So
it's not a great idea. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little village called Newport, Essex, kind of just outside Stansted Airport, or kind of like half an hour from Cambridge. Kind of this really sleepy little village. I kind of probably from a young age kind of had ideas that I would, of leaving it as soon as I grew up. Yeah, because it was very boring.
I was going to ask you, was any of your early music making about getting out?
No, actually, no, not at all. My very, very early music making probably was like when I was 7 or 8. I was talking to my sister recently, actually. She's like, do you remember that song you wrote about your rabbit? And I was like,
a rabbit.
Yeah. So I think that was my very early songwriting experiences.
Oh, that's interesting. Was it about the rabbit, or was it a conversation with the rabbit, or?
Well, I think I was going on holiday, and it was all about how I'd missed the rabbit once I was on holiday. So still a bit of that melancholy.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so emotions were quite important to you right from an early age.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of stuck around in terms of your music writing thing. But it's interesting how different people approach writing, or what kind of angle they approach writing from. I guess some people are quite, look at things almost like a fly on the wall, and give you a kind of,
like observing or something.
Yeah, I always think of people like Jarvis Cocker with his lyrics about, where you almost feel like it's almost voyeuristic and you're kind of observing something that's over there.
I also feel like the same thing about Dylan, a lot of Dylan's writing as well, observing what is going on in the world, more so than, say, feeling what's going on in the world. Or maybe it's a bit mixture of both, feeling, you're kind of feeling it as well as observing it or something.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether, I mean, it's a bit of a thing to say that, but perhaps overall, women are better at the emotional side of things rather than the observation.
Maybe. That being said, I feel like Leonard Cohen's very
Oh, well, yeah,
yeah,
there's
so
always
feeling.
exceptions to
Yeah,
the
I
rule.
guess there's exceptions, isn't there? Yeah. But yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe that's why we also really love, like female voices tend to have a kind of reverence, more so I would say than male voices. And I think maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe there is something there about the female voice and how it kind of touches more so in that emotional place within us. Maybe. I mean, I know it does with me when I listen to more female vocals.
Yeah,
But
I'd say
yeah.
that's true. I tend to gravitate towards a female vocal.
Oh, interesting.
I think that I find that I either gravitate towards, if I'm honest, I either gravitate great towards a female vocal or a male vocal where it's a very interesting voice and actually they're
Mm,
doing something very different with their voice, either
mm.
subtly or within the actual music itself.
I know what you
So,
mean. I'm definitely drawn to more voices that are more characterful than say
mm,
perfect. Like there's those people who can just sing so well, but their voices are almost so perfect that there's something not there in it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Yeah.
I really love so from a male point of view, for example, I really love
Yeah.
the singer with everything at the moment. Just the way I mean, the whole structures of their songs, but the way he like uses very quick staccato, and he's like, dum, dum,
Mm.
dum, 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 with his voice, and then he goes. His range is amazing, and he goes, he uses his falsetto really well, and then goes down and then up and down. Just anything like that, where he's really playing with his voice, and it actually almost, if you didn't hear a word, it's actually adding a layer to the song. I think that's quite interesting.
Definitely. And I find falsetto quite interesting in men. It's like um it's some people can do it really well. It's one of those things, I think, if it doesn't work, it's kind of
It's
really bad.
awful.
Yeah. But if you do it well, it's like so interesting. It's like the total opposite. It's like Marmite, you love it or you hate it.
Yeah. I had Lapsley on here
Ah,
one
okay.
time. I don't know whether you've come across Lapsley, but
I think I have actually. Yeah.
yeah, and actually she does the opposite, which I thought was really quite interesting. So she puts an effect on her voice so that actually it lowers her voice so she sounds like a
Ah,
man, and so then
that's
she
really
can
interesting.
so she can then sing sort of like female male parts and almost do like a conversation female male, but she's singing
Mm.
it all, and I thought
Is
that
she
was
singing?
really quite interesting
Yeah,
as well.
definitely. And
Something to
it kind of makes me think about AI and stuff like that, and the kind of like how much easier it's going to become to do stuff like that. Like I don't know, like is there going to be a kind of new revolution in kind of like production and things like that, and what people are capable of doing creatively? Is it kind of, I don't know.
I'm pretty certain we will see it.
Yeah.
And like anything that's out there, AI wise, which is another conversation I have quite a lot during the day.
Yeah, I bet so. I bet.
Um, you know, there's pros and cons to it, I think.
Yes.
I'm sure in the hands, for me, in the hands of anybody that's
Mm.
lazy, technology is dangerous. If if
Yes.
if
Yeah.
if you're already creative and you've already got a creative bone and you're
Exercising
enthusiastic
that through.
and you're
Yeah.
exercising it, and then you see a tool and you think, actually, what can I do with that tool? And part of you is about, how can I bend that tool as well, and how can I break it, how can I
Mm.
manipulate it to do something different with it? Then that's great,
Yeah.
because then you'll push boundaries with it. It's when people go, do you know what I can do? I can push a button, I can do that. So
Mm.
I don't have to put the effort in. But I know,
To yeah.
because
It's like
I
you
think,
have to use your creativity through it, basically. Otherwise, you're not
yeah,
really creating
yeah,
anything.
yeah. Otherwise, it's like, well, I want to push a button and produce some music so I can push some music out there. Well, that's not, you have to then question why that person's done it in the first place. What drives you to write music?
That's interesting, actually. Interesting question, because I was just, before we were doing this, I was just thinking about some video ideas that I have for YouTube, and I was just thinking about like the muse, I guess, or like what is the muse, and why, like how to find the muse, or things like that. And I was just thinking, like, the only muse I've ever really had is just like myself, really, like, and also, I guess, other people. So yeah, either me or somebody else. But normally with somebody else, it's still kind of about me, if that makes sense, because it's coming from like your perspective of who the other person is and why they do what they do. But yeah, I think it's like the psychological self, like who we are and why we are, and all of those questions around that, that interest me. And I think that's why, like, the singer-songwriters of like the 60s and stuff, like Dylan and Leonard and Joni and all of those types of people have always been so intriguing to me, because they've kind of been the deep divers into the kind of the self. And yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
well, it does. Yeah. Any favorite sort of singer-songwriters from that kind of era? Is there one that I always like to find out? Is there one that sort of like nobody's ever heard of that you cottoned on to?
No, I don't think there's ones that no one's ever heard of. I mean, I guess Joni Mitchell, she's kind of like an obvious one that everybody says really nowadays, because but she was just like, when I was 15, somebody handed me a CD of hers. It was a Blue album, and I just played it like nonstop until basically the CD was dead, and I had to go and buy another CD to give back to the person. But yeah,
I think that was the first Joni Mitchell album I was given.
Yeah.
Or got as well.
And there's just something so, and this is still a magical record. It is just phenomenal. And then I got into Leonard because I just liked the depth of his lyrics. And there was some, like, Billie Holiday. Like, I felt like her voice was like so special. I felt like she was just one of those singers that could sing it didn't matter what she sung, it would just always sound kind of painful and deep.
I was going to say,
like,
there's a real pain in that voice, isn't there?
Yes, exactly. But also I grew up in the 90s, so like the big singers, like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston and all of that. I mean, I was a massive Mariah Carey fan, like when I was like 7 or 8 or 9, and did some singing competition, and I did one of her songs.
Hero into your
I don't know, it wasn't Hero, actually. No, I can't remember what the song was now. It was the one that was based on a classical piece of music in the background. I can't remember what it was, but yes, I basically sung that and in a competition, and I came first and won this donkey bookmark. So it was like, yes,
But back in the day when prices didn't have to be grand for them to be special, donkey bookmarks.
Exactly. Yes.
Our expectations have kind of gone through the roof.
I know. Imagine if that, like, like people have X Factor now, and it's like, oh, you could win a whole following and have a whole career if you win this competition.
But even kids at school, if you said, well, you're going to win a donkey bookmark, they'd be like,
they'd laugh in your face, probably.
Not a £30 book token, or I don't get a holiday or something, out of this. Yeah, no, it's true. I came across you on Instagram. Really refreshing way of trying to get people into your music. I mean, you had like some video clips up there, but you also had sort of like, well, support me, buy my music and get it at a reasonable price, which I think is a great way to do it. What made you take that kind of route? Because I think it's a successful kind of route that a lot of people should follow.
Yeah, I think the pandemic basically was, for like a lot of people, just a complete game changer. And at the time, I just thought, right, I kind of threw myself into work, because obviously you couldn't do anything else. So I threw myself into like building an online bit more of an online following. So I started a Facebook group, and I started a YouTube channel. So I started doing covers on YouTube and covers in the Facebook group too. And I'd kind of do rough ones in the Facebook group and then decide which one was good and do it for YouTube. But I started using Facebook ads because I saw somebody else do this offer, like, kind of a free CD offer. You just have to pay the postage. And I thought, I'll just see if that works. And it did. I grew my group by, like, it's more or less 1,000 people. And that kind of worked for a while. But I feel like that kind of way of doing it might be coming to an end, because a lot has changed in the Facebook ad system, and it's always evolving, and there's been lots of changes. So I'm kind of in the middle of, like, trying to find a new route, maybe by growing my group more through the Facebook ad system. But yes, I'm still kind of doing the free CD, but not necessarily as an ad anymore. But yeah, I think it's a good way to get people in, and then once you have them there, you can basically show them what you're about. You can show them your music, show them, so many different sides to yourself and all of that, and kind of create that connection, which I think is what it's about. And I think that's kind of what the pandemic taught me, that actually all of this is just about creating an audience, really, creating people who connect to what you're doing. And all of the traditional ways of doing it, like record labels and all of that other stuff, just seem to I just became completely uninterested in going down that road, really.
Well, the trouble is, all of that is something for the very small minority.
Yes.
Who have got the money behind them.
Yeah.
In order to make that happen.
Yes, that's true.
And it's interesting, because I actually had on a program that I was recording earlier today, I had another musician who generously popped in at the last minute, but he contacted me because they'd got to number 3 in the Heritage chart, and they're trying to push to get to number 1. And he said, "Oh, is there any opportunity to do something?" And I said, "Well, actually, come and talk on this show that I'm doing in the middle of the day, and we're talking about well-being. And but you can talk about that as well." And whilst we were there, we were discussing, and I've had this conversation with several musicians as well recently, the fact that I think we are entering a phase now where actually musicians need to realize that actually it's not just about the music.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, actually it's about what else do you have to give, and what's your total brand, if you like.
Yes. And
right?
actually, yeah, also I was just going to say, if you think about it, actually, I think it's always been this way. Like, because if you look at people like Lady Gaga, for example, it's not just her music that people are attracted to. It's this whole sense of, like, be who you are, be authentic, don't care about what other people say about you and all of that. So she has this whole kind of persona as well. And I think this has always been the case. If you go back, I think this is kind of, people get attracted to you just as much as they get attracted to the music.
I think it has. I think the slight difference now is that it doesn't necessarily have to be about the mystique.
Right.
Or
Yes.
the pop star. I think going back.
Yes.
It potentially was more about
the distance between, like, they're the famous person.
But now I think it can be the opposite. So, and again, I had a young musician on a few weeks back who's also very heavily into their psychology, and on LinkedIn we've connected up to do with her psychology practice, etc. And I said to her, "Well, are you talking about both at all, your music and your psychology, ever? Are you using the connectivity between the two?" And she was like, "No, actually, I've kind of almost seen it like, well, I talk about that, or I talk about that." And I was kind of encouraging her to say, "Well, no, maybe it's more like that."
Yes. Actually, it's funny, because this is something I've just realized literally in the last year, because so I started off, like I was saying, on YouTube with all the covers, but I realized that I mean, I liked doing the covers when I was doing them, but I just felt like I wasn't putting myself out there. I wasn't putting my music out there. I wasn't putting, who I actually was out there. And that was kind of frustrating because I felt like, well, I'm doing this, but at the same time, I don't really feel like I'm doing it. And then, so last year, I kind of stopped doing a lot of social media, had a bit of a break. And from that break, kind of had a bit of a kind of realization that actually I want to kind of put more of, like what you were just saying, put more of me out there. And so I've kind of come up with these ideas of talking about creativity and, maybe lyric writing and doing all of this stuff now. So this coming into this year, that's kind of like more of what I want to do as a new album is coming out.
Yeah,
So
I think it's very sensible.
yeah,
Actually.
and I think it's more connecting as well. Like, and you get to connect with the it's not just about you putting you out. It's also, you're gonna get something back from your audience as well.
Definitely, definitely. And your songs that you write obviously have a depth to them,
Yeah.
So in terms of where they're coming from, what other aspects of your life really feed into your music?
It's an interesting question. I feel like there's more of a spiritual side that I've been kind of connecting to in the last few years. It's a bit like, in a weird way, when I was younger, I used to look at Leonard Cohen and look at his trajectory of like the way his career kind of went. I kind of like, that was kind of like an ideal situation for me, like becoming bigger in my 30s and then like just still managing to kind of carry on through the rest of your life. But I never really looked at, but now it seems kind of like weird because I've suddenly got into all this spiritual stuff. And, like at one time he became a monk and did all this, like it seems to be a thing a lot of musicians do as well. Like even if you take the Beatles, for example, they all did a stint in kind of like India and,
Yep.
all you need is love and all of that kind of stuff. So I feel like, I don't know, that's going to tie in somewhere as I progress through this year, I think.
Yeah, I know. I think it's important, and wherever that's coming from as well, I think it's important to develop it. I saw, Natasha Khan, Back for Lashes. I mean, she's possibly on the darker side of things, but she's produced like sets of cards and whatever, and she's got her
Oh,
own
cool.
reading cards and whatever now, and that's what she's pushing at the moment, prior to whatever new music she's going to push out.
Oh, interesting.
And kind of like the white witch type thing, and and you just think, well, this is quite good to see that people are beginning to adopt kind of other aspects of what really interests them, and even looking at physically putting output out there which isn't necessarily music in the first instance, but then blending in some music, so much she
Yes.
maybe like use music to theatrically promote that or produce that. So she's
Definitely.
beginning to make the cerebral connections for people that there's that and then this, and it can come together. But also, I think what's important with that is that you're building better longevity for you as a career as well, because you're building different streams, if you like, of where
Yes.
people can connect to you.
Definitely. Yeah.
And even things like this, like one of the reasons that I do so much of this is actually because I produce do lots of other stuff elsewhere. But starting with conversations somewhere can draw people into going, oh, actually, this is an entry point for someone. Oh, we can come in and talk about this, but then they can get interested in that. And the amount of people that have come on and they've watched a music conversation, and then they go, oh, I really liked you, or I like the conversations you're having, and then they're transfer over to a conversation about ergonomics or about company culture or about whatever it is that we're having,
Yes.
mental health and well-being over there. And the gap isn't actually that wide at
No,
the end of the
no.
day.
No, I totally agree. And like, I have this whole plan of putting out this video, it's kind of be like a long drawn video. I'm going to kind of put it out, I think, throughout the whole year, and it's kind of connected to kind of the songs, like some more songs than others, like loosely. But the whole, because I started doing these like videos like with little clips and then putting them all together and making a kind of collage, I guess, like collage video. Yeah. And I really got into them. And so it's going to be more of that, but it's going to be more of a story, I think, this time throughout. So it's going to be like a long story, which I think is quite an interesting, because like I really like that creative thing to kind of be put into different areas, like, you know, it's put into songs, but now it's put into videos, and what else can it be put into? It's kind of, you know, just opening that up as well.
And I guess as you do that, you may encounter, or you may, you know, bump into other creatives along the journey, and you might actually go, you know, they might come along with you as well. I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
I've seen that in the past as well, where, you know, if you start sort of working on words or video or whatever, you'll then get someone that's like maybe really into photography or something, go, actually, I've got a set of images that I really think
would work for this. Yeah.
really well in that. And then that's, you know, that just becomes part of a natural
progression
and relationship. And you can then, and that it's quite useful as well for any creative, I think, to
definitely. And I think the other thing is
creatives.
Yes, exactly. And also, like, just what we're doing now, having, like you said, having this conversation, I think also you can just have conversations with other artists as well. Like, we tend to think of collaboration should just be about the music, like, oh, we'll write a song together, but you know, that can be quite a time consuming task. And also, you know, you've got to find someone you gel with and all of that other stuff, and you could just have a chat about, you know, what's creativity to you, or how, you know, like, there's so many different things you could talk about that can help also grow your following as well. Because like you said, someone will, you know, listen on that channel and then go to another channel, and it's just all like connected, isn't it? Kind of like this big web.
Just tell people a little bit about the album.
What, the Dark Water album?
Dark Water, yeah.
So I kind of started sporadically writing it in my 20s, but I went through a big period at the end where I just couldn't write anything. And so at that time I was kind of thinking maybe this just isn't for me, and I was, you know, had a lot of self-doubt, like whether I was going to be doing it. But then in my early 30s, I kind of had this massive creative shift where it just started becoming much easier. And so songs like the American Song, that was kind of written kind of retrospectively about a situation that I was kind of in my early 20s. So I went traveling around America, and I was traveling for about 3 days on a train. And I just happened to be sitting next to this guy, and he just kind of like just gave me his whole childhood story. It was really tragic, like a really tragic story. And it was just one of those stories that was so tragic, it just stayed with me. Like I just kept on thinking about it, you know, like, and then that kind of came, and then, yeah, the American Song kind of came out from this story that he was telling me. Yeah, kind of, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 years later. And Dark Water I wrote when I was like 19, really. So that was kind of like, yeah, a really long time ago. And the melody and the chorus lyrics are the same, but I rewrote the verses much later on. So yeah, it was kind of like just really sporadically written, and then, yeah, released just before a pandemic. So yeah, that was it was an interesting ride.
Yeah. Do you, in terms of moving on from there and what's coming next, do you think, will you be looking for what's coming next to have a different feel at all, or do you think it will have a more sort of together theme in a way, as opposed to, like, because Dark Water in a way feels like little stories?
Yeah, you're right. I think it might feel, to say it might feel more together, but I don't know yet. Because like I think sometimes it's not until you've
Wait and
really,
see.
yeah, like because I'm going to be like recording the songs as I go, so I'm hopefully going to be like releasing one song a month. So I'm going to just be recording one song a month as I go, but I've written a couple of songs on piano. Now I don't play piano, so it's pretty raw. And so that's interesting because I feel like, I needed to kind of get away from guitar for a bit and just, feel as if I just didn't know what I was doing anymore on something, just feel like, because sometimes that can help, because sometimes you can get really stuck in like certain chords or certain ways of playing. And
I
so that's
totally
kind of,
understand that, by the way, because
yeah.
I play guitar, but I don't really play piano. But I love sitting at a piano, and I love just
Mm,
playing like triads and stuff at a piano. This
mm.
hand's rubbish on the piano, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just
Right?
like a
This
one-handed.
this
Yeah.
can kind of do like one bass note while this is
Yeah.
doing something like a little melody, or but just the physical difference from a guitar just means you just gravitate towards writing in a completely different way, which is
Exactly. And I feel like one of them just came out really kind of quickly. They were both like both of those songs actually were written quite quickly. Um and they have quite like more of a strong melody line, which I kind of, I kind of really like those kind of types of songs. But also I'm kind of trying to talk to different people about like am I going to get somebody else to record it this time, because obviously the last one I did myself, but this time I do feel like sometimes when I listen to the songs I feel like there's some things that are like, oh, I can hear maybe like some kind of soft choir in the background on this part, which I just don't really have the skills to do. So I'm kind of like hoping that some of the people I'm talking to, maybe it's going to come to fruition. But if not, then it will be me and maybe a friend. I might pull in a friend. So we're just going to see
pulling
what
a
we can
friend.
do. Yeah.
Phone a friend. Phone a friend.
Yeah,
Is there,
exactly.
is there a producer out there that you kind of look to as a big inspiration?
I like Rick Rubin because
Mm.
I love what he says about creativity, because he's doing a whole thing about creativity at the moment, and I just completely and utterly relate to everything that he's saying about it, and the struggles, and like it's really just, yeah. And so I like I tend to get drawn to people less on what they've done, but more on who they are and like what they're about creatively. Like, are they going to be someone you can go to who's like really open, where you
Mm.
can take your thoughts to, and we can kind of like hash our way through some things to see what works and what doesn't. That to me is, it's like more of an intuitive way of working. So that's what I'm kind of drawn to more than say a more kind of like, I don't know, someone just listens to it and just says, well, let's do this. And, it's more of a practical way of doing stuff.
Yeah, I find the whole production thing's really quite interesting, because obviously
Yeah.
production in itself is an incredibly creative process, and you can
Mm.
completely change a song from production. But I find the whole conversation, when I'm reading books about where people have worked with particular producers, or the kind of production process that people have gone through, you know just some of the relationship part of that
Mm.
is really, really interesting, where
Yeah.
especially where it may be that someone's gone, I don't actually rate that, or whatever, and someone's picked it up and gone, I loved your pieces. I
Mm.
love the breadcrumbs that you've got there. And actually, what you haven't seen is that you've come to me with this, which is complete, and that's complete. And but what about that? And it's like, well, that's not a
Mm.
song yet. But no, it can be.
Mm.
I
Yes.
love that, just that little bit that you've got there. I can see how that could grow,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, I find like the production thing is like I think it's like the most skilled job, like in the music. If you take all the jobs in the music industry, I think doing someone's production is like so difficult, because it's just
Mm,
like a whole different way of uh, using your creativity and a whole different way of thinking. And I think a lot of the people who are good at it can kind of hear something maybe in their heads before it's even kind of on the page.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
it's
sense.
amazing what we can do now as well.
Yeah.
Where someone can actually like make something so it almost feels like you're underwater 1 minute, and then you're breaking out of water, and it's like sonically they can produce that.
Yes.
And
And you know
it's
what?
like,
I was
wow.
Yeah, totally. And you know what I find really interesting as well? I've been listening to a lot of Enigma recently. I don't know if you know Enigma.
Yeah.
And I just love, I think it's the same reason I love the videos where you just take all these different clips and stick them together. I just love how Enigma just uses all these different genres. Like, you've got an African man singing at one point, and then you've got like a Gregorian choir or something, and then they've got like somebody saying something rather than singing, and it's just like all of this like mismatch, but somehow they just put it all together and just make this beautiful song, and you're just like, and they're very inspiring.
Do you remember Art of Noise?
No, I don't. What was Art of Noise?
Well, go back and explore Art of Noise.
Okay, yeah, I'll look them up.
Art of Noise was a little project that Trevor Horn, who's obviously another famous producer, put together, predominantly with Anne Dudley, who's an orchestral arranger. But it was, it's way back then in the 80s, but it was really interesting just what they did, because they created these soundscape songs, etc. One of them it was called Close to the Edit. I think it got to number 1 or number 2 in the charts. But it was all just noises, but then fed together and and then developed into sort of quasi classical bits and whatever. And it's just, you could just hear them really being creative with the whole process of sound, which was great. And
I love that. I love the whole, it's like, again, it's just like that kind of mishmash of things, like what we were saying about, what's the word, a collage. It's like a collage of sounds, isn't it, in a way? And I just
if
love
anyone's
that.
watching, by the way, and they'd love to get in touch with Katie and offer to do any kind of production on her new work, don't feel shy, because you never know. We've had all sorts of relationships start on this show. We've had people that were fantastic keyboard players meet up with other guests and tour the world. So it all happens. Yeah, it all happens.
That's
here.
Amazing.
It's always worth a conversation, I think.
Definitely.
Even if you decide no, it doesn't really work, you don't know until you ask. So there you go. Well, listen, I love your work. I find it it certainly challenges the ear and the brain both at the same time, which is wonderful. And it's emotionally, it's work that really tries to grab you
into your heart,
and get into you. Yeah, absolutely. Which is more and more challenging as the years go on, I think.
Yeah.
Especially as we sort of struggle for time.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I will say is, if you do get a copy of Katie's album, or you're going to stream a copy of Katie's album, please do just put the whole thing on and give it the time to listen through the whole thing.
Yeah, I feel like some people have said, oh, it's something that can't, it's more of a slow burn. And then other people have said, like, I think it depends on, like, maybe it's like an introvert extrovert thing or something. If you're more, I don't know, but yeah, other people have said, oh, they've just, from the first listen, they've liked it. So yeah, I don't know. It could go either way. But yeah, I see it is probably more of a slow burn. But
I don't know whether for me it was a slow burn, but I definitely feel like yours is the kind of music I wouldn't just want. You're certainly not going to skip tracks. So if you're the kind of person that's got at the moment a sort of 30-second attention span when it comes to music, please do try a little bit harder.
I think all of our attention spans are getting a bit.
Well, I think it's a major problem, and I have discussed it several times on this show before now, which is that we need to relearn to listen. I'm pleased to see that, and well, I'm hoping actually that with the fact that people are beginning to buy vinyl again, with the fact that people are beginning to buy even tapes, in physical
I don't
formats.
get tapes really. I mean,
Well,
vinyls I get, but
kind of do.
do it really?
I kind of do, yeah. Because what I'm hoping is that it's actually about people realizing that there's a pleasure.
I see. Yeah.
In actually having to listen to a whole side of something and then turning it over and then listen to the other side. There's a commitment there, and we always had that commitment growing up. You'd save up for weeks to buy your favorite album. You'd buy it and then you'd play it to death.
Yeah.
And you'd listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. Music seems to travel past so quickly, and it's one of the things I was talking to my wife about the other day, which is that, well, why don't we remember lyrics anymore to songs? And she was saying, well, yeah, but years ago we used to listen to the same music over and over and over for weeks before there's something new came along, and nowadays it's like songs are just coming out into the ether all of the time. You're not actually absorbing that for any length of time. So I think it's nice to buy the album. That's what I'm saying. Buy the physical album, buy Katie's CD and just listen to it, for goodness sake. And if you haven't got a CD player, buy a CD player. 35 quid on eBay, you get a whole sound system. Trust me, I've done it myself. There you go. I look forward to hearing what you produce throughout the year.
Yeah.
Katie. And I love the idea of this kind of panoramic video evolving.
Yeah. And I love the idea. Like, I never really thought about putting out a song once a month, and it was another musician actually that suggested it again last year, and it just seemed to make sense. It was like, how we used to, we kind of think, well, I've got a couple of years to write another one and then I'll put it out, but that doesn't seem to make sense anymore in the social media world, because people want content and people want things, so it doesn't make sense to sit and write an album over 2 years. And I think that doesn't really work with my temperament anyway, because I'm more likely to just think that I've got so much time when I don't, so it's like, it's better that I have that little bit of pressure to go, okay, what can I put out this month?
Yeah, I think it's good. And a bit of advice is always produce the long form piece of content first, and then you can always disseminate that into lots of little short
ones.
form pieces. Yeah.
True.
Absolutely. So it's which is what we do with this here. We produce a long form. People like the long form, but to get them into it, quite often I produce a whole load of 20-second clips, which goes on all of the social medias and gets people to dive in. But if you start with the long bit, it's easier.
Yes.
than trying to do it the other way around. Pleasure to have you on.
It was really fun. Really nice chatting to you.
Yeah, and you. Katie's album is out now. You can already buy it. She's working on the next one as we speak. It's called Dark Walker. It's available on CD. It's very reasonably priced. If you connect with her on the Instagram or anything like that, you can find a link and you can go and buy it. She might even sign it for you.
Yeah, I think I do.
Which I think you do. Which is wonderful. And then she'd like to take you on her journey with you. I look forward to seeing more from you in 2024. Thank you for coming on and talking.
Thanks for inviting me. Cheers.
Thank you.